Welcome back to the channel, everybody. We are Jay and Nina. We spent a year traveling all around the country in a van, and now we are traveling through Europe.
While traveling Europe, we used the Eurail Pass, and I have a love-hate relationship with it. Love it for its affordable price and flexibility, hate it for not being very user-friendly or intuitive. While I was planning our trip, I was frustrated by the lack of information about using the pass. So after relying on this pass for our entire Europe trip, I am making the video that I wish I had when I was planning our trip. Jay's typically just along for the ride as I plan all of our trips, so you can go now.
Be nice.
Jay does a lot of other stuff for us. He edits all these videos. He's probably editing this one right now. Planning is my area of expertise. So this is everything I know and everything I have learned about the Eurail Pass. For starters, Eurail is for non-European Union citizens, and Interrail is the name for European Union citizens. So is Eurail right for you, and is it the best bang for your buck? For us, we did the 2-month global pass, which included 15 travel days. It was $370 each, and that is because we got a youth discount because we're both still under 26. So what is a travel day? A travel day is a 24-hour calendar day starting at midnight and going to the following midnight. During that travel day, you can take as many trains as you want, all under your Eurail Pass. So what 15 travel days means over 2 months is for 15 days during that 2-month span, we can take as many trains as we want during that calendar day. The only exception is overnight trains. And for overnight trains, the rule is that if you have no changeovers, so meaning you don't get off the train and get on a new train after midnight, it still counts for the original travel day and you're not using 2 travel days. But say you're on a train and you have to switch over to a new train at 3 a.m. Now you're going to be taking 2 travel days instead of 1. And then there's reservations. The worst part about Eurail. Not all trains are 100% included in the Eurail Pass. There are some where you need a reservation. Usually these are high-speed trains, and we found them to be most common connecting major cities. Now the perk of these high-speed trains is they're high speed, so you're usually going to get to your destination a lot quicker.
How fast have we been going?
170 miles per hour. But you need a reservation. Reservations tended to run about $10 a person, but there's a little variance, and that is an additional cost on top of what you already paid for your Eurail Pass. I'll go over how to make these reservations a little bit later, but they're important to know about. There's also certain no reservation routes that Eurail is really going to try to push and advertise for. We did not find these to be very helpful. Yes, you can do a route with no reservations, but it's going to take you 8 hours to get from Rome to Florence instead of 1 hour. So they're not always the most ideal, and it's usually worth it to pay the extra $10. So back to deciding if Eurail is right for you. My method was I went to raileurope.com. It's not connected to Eurail, even though it sounds very similar. It basically has all the trains in Europe. And I inputted all the trains I anticipated that we would take and added up the cost of what those trains would be paying out of pocket without a pass. Then I wrote down that number and put it aside. And then, using the Eurail app, it's called Rail Planner, I inputted all of our journeys that we wanted to take into that app to number 1, see if they were covered by Eurail, and then to see if they had reservations. If they had reservations, I added the cost of the reservations to the total cost of the Eurail Pass, and once I was done with that, I was able to compare the 2 numbers. Okay, what's it going to cost out of pocket to travel Europe without a Eurail Pass, and what's it going to cost with a Eurail Pass? And that is ultimately how we made our decision. If you're only traveling to 1 or 2 countries, it's worth looking into the single country passes. Eurail offers specific country passes, but also most countries and their rail system offer country-specific passes. We liked Eurail because they had that global pass, which allowed us to go all over Europe in between countries all the time. More of our math equation to understand the value that we were getting out of our Eurail pass was taking that $370 that we were paying for our pass, dividing it by the 15 travel days that we were getting. That comes out to about $24 a day. So we wanted to make sure that each travel day we were using our Eurail pass for more than $24 worth of trains to really be getting the most for our money. For example, there was one day where we were traveling from Nice to Monaco, which is about a $10 train ticket. And instead of using a whole travel day for that train, we just paid out of pocket to save the travel day for when we would be doing a much longer distance, more expensive train. So something to know about having Eurail is you're not committed to only using Eurail. You can still buy other tickets, especially cheaper ones, to save those travel days for more expensive train journeys. So now that you hopefully have a better idea if Eurail is right for your trip or not, it comes down to using the Eurail. and overall just using the train system across Europe in general. Starting with reservations. Like I said, I hate them. We found 3 main ways to make reservations. Number 1 was at the actual train station. We did this for our first few reservations because I was so confused on how to make them online that we were like, we'll just go to the train station. So I waited to make our Eurail train reservations till we got to the train station because I could figure it out online, but honestly, like on desktop, it was like $34 a person. And then on mobile app, I tried to do it and it was $12 a person. For some reason, it said our pass numbers were invalid. So I was like, okay, it's fine, I'll just do it at the train station. Train station, it was $4 cheaper total for the 2 of us for the reservations, so that was nice. But we walked in and she was like, everything to Paris seems full today. We might not be able to get you on the train. And that was terrifying for a second. It was hard to find the reservation office. There's usually only one office in the entire train station. It's usually pretty crowded and you have to wait in a long line. And then after we finally found the office and waited in line, we went up to the kiosk to try to get our reservation with some assistance. And the lady helping us was like, oh, we're definitely sold out of those. They've been booked out for a while. Luckily, she was able to find us a reservation and it worked out all right for us, but that inspired us to really figure out how to make our reservations online so that wouldn't happen to us again. Which brings me to way number 2, is on the mobile app. So on the mobile app, I never did successfully. It was always glitching, and you'll hear that this is one of my main complaints with Eurail is their mobile app is not so user-friendly. So I'll walk you through how to make a reservation, and if it works for you, then awesome. Once you have your train plans all set up, you click See Details, and then it will show you where you need to make reservations. On there's some steps that you can follow, and if it works for you, you'll be able to make reservations on there. Like I said, I was never able to, so I wouldn't count on this one too much. Number 3 is online. So using my laptop, I was able to go onto Eurail.com, input the train journey, and find a reservation, and then purchase it right through there. The con of doing the mobile reservation, so on your phone or on your computer instead of the train station, is they always tack on an extra fee. So the reservations go from being, say, $10 to $15 a person. I would say $10 was about the standard for reservations, but overnight trains, longer trains, it can really be anywhere to like $34, $50. I especially had issues with online and originally hadn't made them on there because my app would tell me the reservation was going to be $12, and then I'd go on my laptop and it would say $34. And then when I went into the train station, it was $10. So this is why I hate reservations, because it's not easy to make and it's not consistent. We did try to avoid them at all costs, but like I mentioned earlier, sometimes you just need them. Because we were traveling in the off season, we did get away with pretty minimal reservations, or we were able to make them last minute because the trains weren't too crowded. Had we been traveling in the summer, we definitely would have missed and not been able to get on the trains that we wanted to if we hadn't made reservations weeks and weeks in advance. Something else I dislike about reservations, to keep the list going, is once you make the reservation, you are locked in. They're not refundable. So say you make your reservation online a few days before, like we did a few times, and then your first train to get to the reservation train is delayed by 40 minutes. If you miss that reservation train, you have to make a whole new reservation for a future train and you don't get that money back. There's nothing you can do about it. I wish I had a silver bullet for you of how to make reservations easy, but the truth is they're just not. So expect that. Always have a backup is what we found, that if we don't get this reservation that we want, we have this other reservation that we could do instead. So next up with using your Eurail Pass is cancellations. The biggest perk of Eurail and why we loved it so much in comparison to just buying train tickets out of pocket is the flexibility. Say you want to cancel a train, you want to change your route, you want to go somewhere totally different, you miss a train, one is delayed, you name it. Anything you want to do to change is usually super easy to do. The only thing that you can't switch is once you start a travel day. So say you have it on your plan that you want May 25th to be a travel day. If it comes the morning of May 25th, and that travel day is still active and you decide you don't want it to be a travel day anymore, you can't change that. Now say on May 24th, you're like, oh, tomorrow, May 25th, I have a travel day scheduled, I don't want that anymore, you can turn it off and you're good to go. It's just day of, you cannot change a travel day once it has already started. Make sense? Hopefully. Finding your train. When we first started our Europe trip, the first week or so, we did not understand how to figure out what our app was telling us of our train from Eurail and the train in the station. So this is really important for just practically finding your train. In the app, you will see your train and it will have a train number. Where I really got messed up is when I was looking at the big light up board in the train station, I was always looking for my destination listed. Now, what I didn't realize is the destination that's listed is the final destination of the train, and we weren't always getting off at the final destination. So that's why it's important to look at the train number and the time that the train leaves. And so I would try to match up our train number and the time with a train on the board. That's how I would figure out what platform we were on. So that big light up board in the train station will be your life. Trains in Europe are not like flights. That was something we also didn't expect. You don't have to be at the train station hours early. Just a few minutes will do the trick, but definitely get there with enough time to look at the board and get your bearings. Something else that I was really off on was I thought all train stations were massive, like the ones you'll see in Paris or Milan. What I was surprised to find is most of the train stations were just tiny little houses with like a coffee shop and 3 or 4 platforms. Not a big deal and really easy to find your next train. Now, if you are going into big cities, then you should definitely leave more time to find your platform, to walk through it. On to other expectations and just things to know about trains in Europe and about Eurail. Starting off with Wi-Fi. So we were told that most trains in Europe have Wi-Fi. So we went in expecting to get a lot of work done on our computers, to always have connection for our phones, and that was just not true. We had Wi-Fi in Austria on the trains, and for that reason we love Austrian trains, but other than that, there was no Wi-Fi on any other trains. Another note on Wi-Fi is I found it was pretty difficult to use Eurail without having cell service out there. If you're super well planned and organized and you just have Wi-Fi at your accommodations for the night, you can get yourself all set up. But to actually activate the tickets on Eurail, you do need to have connection. And if you ever want to change something, you miss a train, you want to add a different one, you're going to need service to activate a new ticket. So we did get one cell plan while we were out there, and it was on my phone. So we had both Jay and I's tickets on my phone, and we went the last 7 days of our trip without any self-service, and we definitely missed it. There's a few trains that we kind of had to ride rogue, even though we had the pass that allowed us to, just because we couldn't download the right tickets. At first we thought we could just screenshot the tickets to show them, but they don't accept those. There's a little timestamp in the corner, and we often had the ticket checkers come around and ask us to actually pull up the ticket. So if there's no service on the train and you don't have a cell plan, you're kind of stuck. Usually once you're on trains, if you're going in between countries, they're not going to check your passport. They're just going to come by and scan your ticket. We did have 2 trains going into Austria where they checked our passports, and we had one train where they came by and asked for our $10 reservation fee, even though the train said you didn't need a reservation and everyone just had to pay it. I don't really know what to say about that one. They just came around and asked for it and everyone had to pay.
I don't think it was a reservation fee. I think it was like a border crossing tax.
But yeah, just random things like that will happen. Expect the unexpected. Even though you probably won't need your passports, make sure they're handy when you're on the train. So like I said, both Jay and I's passes were on my phone. And so you can put multiple passes on one phone. You'll just save it on 2 separate trips. You'll pull them up separately for the ticket scanner to scan. Our friend Jordan joined us for the last 2 weeks of the trip, and he got the 1-month 10-day pass. Now we considered adding him also to my phone because I was going to be the one with service, but because we were splitting up and he was staying in Europe while we were leaving, once a pass is locked in on one phone, you cannot switch it to another device. So we did have him put it on his own phone, and when he needed service, I would just hotspot him. Once we left and separated from him, we didn't want him to be without his pass. So that is something to note. If your group is going to split up at all, make sure everyone has their own pass on their own device, because you cannot switch it and just log in on a different device. Like I said, I don't love the Eurail app because I think it could be so much more intuitive, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. Starting off, you build your itinerary. It's just on the home screen, build your itinerary, and you're gonna add it to My Journey. Once it's saved to your journey, you need to actually go to your journey and activate it or turn it on. That's that little slider, and now you have the ticket for that pass. When it's time to use the ticket, you need to go to the My Pass tab and click on Show Ticket. Now this Show Ticket, if it is a train with reservations, you'll have to have that Show Ticket screen, and you'll need to have your receipt, either mobile or physical depending on the way that you made your reservation, and they will scan both the QR code on your reservation and your Eurail Pass. Once you activate a ticket and turn it on, if that day is not already set as a travel day, it's going to turn on one of your travel days. So don't turn those on unless you're sure that you want that to be a travel day. Again, if you change your mind and you're not actually on that travel day yet, you can turn it off and you'll get that travel day back. I've had pretty good luck with flights in the past, and I've never missed a connecting flight. I've never had a delay that was too long, and so I was a little bit naive going into these trains. Eurail will tell you if it's a short changeover. It'll say like 10-minute changeover in red letters when you're on that planner, or it'll say 6-minute changeover. And I was a little bit confused by that and thought the only reason for it was not enough time to get from one platform to another in a big station. But what I realized being in Europe is trains are always delayed. I think we had more delayed trains than we had on-time trains. So that is something to expect. We found out very quickly that if we had a short changeover, that we always needed to have a backup train in the back of our mind to take in case we missed it. So just in general, having backup plans is probably a best practice. Chances are, if you've got a short changeover, you might miss your next train, and it is good to not be stranded. We got off our other train that was 2 minutes late, and our other train is delayed, which is what we were hoping for. But it's delayed an hour, so we're here for another hour. But that's much better than waiting 2 hours for the other train. So we found ourselves running from train to train pretty often. Run. I'm not gonna make it! One of the perks of the Eurail Pass is that you can take as many trains as you want in a day. So sometimes you might want to go from Florence to Rome, just wander around the city of Rome, and then hop back on a train from Rome to Naples or something equivalent. While you're exploring Rome, you probably don't want to be carrying all your bags, so a lot of train stations have lockered storage. Knowing when to get off your train can sometimes be difficult. Sometimes, like in Austria, we love the Austrian trains, there's a really nice light up board that shows you which stop you're at, which stop is coming next, what time it's supposed to arrive, and all of those details. And then sometimes they just make an announcement and it's in a foreign language and you're trying to understand and see if that's your stop. And sometimes they don't say anything. You're just pulling up to stations randomly. So something that I would always do is I would look in the app at what time we were supposed to arrive at our destination. I would set an alarm for 5-10 minutes on my phone before that time. So my alarm would go off before we were supposed to get off, and I would know to start paying attention. I'd pull up my Apple Maps and zoom in and see what city we're on, see if we look like we're close, because you don't know if they're gonna tell you. There were a few times where we didn't know if we had stayed on the train too long. There's a few times that we got off the train too early, and so setting that alarm and being pretty diligent about paying attention when you're supposed to get off is going to be important. Not all trains are going to make it very easy for you. Eurail gives you the option when you're buying your pass to buy either a first class pass or a second class pass. First class, of course, is more expensive, and a lot of trains don't even have a first class. So in our opinion, it wasn't worth it to do the first class. You probably are not going to get very much out of it. Now, when you have Eurail, something important to know is not every single train in Europe is part of the Eurail Pass. Some of those really famous trains, like the Glacial Express, are not going to be included, or we had a few in Switzerland and in Austria, getting into little mountain towns that we had to pay out of pocket in addition to our Eurail Pass. Sometimes the Eurail Pass gave us a discount, so when we were at the kiosk, we always looked for an opportunity to put that we had a Eurail Pass. We had once where it knocked it 50% off, and that was awesome, but know that not every single train you take is going to be part of the pass. Eurail advertises buses and boats to be included in the pass. We found that this is just very select buses and boats. We never took a boat. It would have been cool, but it just wasn't part of our itinerary, so I don't know much about that. Buses, your average public transportation bus in all the cities and towns we were in was not included. We did have once though where it said it was a train, and then when we were looking at the big board at the train station, it said it was a bus. So we got on the bus and it got us to our destination. It happened to us once, it was random, and we had no way of telling that it was a bus. It just happened to be one. So I wouldn't say that's normal or common, but there are a few of those included in the pass, and you might find yourself unexpectedly on a bus or a boat at some point. As you may or may not know, public bathrooms in Europe cost money.
Well, looks like you're having to hold it.
And if you're like us, trying to save every penny you can, you don't want to pay $1 every time you have to go to the bathroom. So we got really good at maximizing the bathrooms on the trains. I would always go pee right when I got on a train and right when I was about to leave, because bathrooms on the trains are always free. So take advantage of that, because at the train stations, you'll have to pay. When I was planning our places to stay, I was always looking for a place to stay right by the major train station. Something I wish I knew or that I thought of was that trains have multiple destinations in between big cities. So in our case, we were taking a train connecting Nice to Monaco, and the only two places I looked for places to stay was in Nice or in Monaco. And what I wish I had thought of is there's like 5 stops in between those two cities, and we could have stayed in any of those small quaint towns right by the train station there for cheaper, and we could have avoided the crowds of the big city. So if I was going back, I wouldn't try to stay near the main major train station. I would try to stay next to a smaller train station along the route, because we love those small towns and villages so much, and we wanted to spend more time in those and less time in the big cities. Now, another thing with having the Eurail Pass is you might make the assumption, oh, all my transportation is covered with this pass. And once you're actually in the town or the city that you're in, you're still going to have to pay for public transportation around that area. So for example, when we were in Paris, we were constantly buying metro tickets because the metro is not part of the Eurail Pass. We also didn't want to use up travel days just for getting a $5 ticket to the Eiffel Tower. Or when we were in the Amalfi Coast, we were taking those buses, and that was about $2 a bus ride, which is not all that expensive, but it does add up. So make sure to factor in transportation costs in addition to the major trains. Another money saving tip with trains is to avoid buying food on the train or in the train station. Most long trains have dining cars, and we did find ourselves getting coffee every once in a while from those dining cars. And of course, train stations usually have places to eat, but they are far more expensive than just going down the street and finding a local food stand. So if at all possible, go to the grocery store, bring snacks on the train, pack a meal to go, instead of relying on the trains to buy your food. So if you look on the Eurail website, you'll see there's a ton of different options. Like I said, we chose the 2-month 15-day pass, but you can do 1 month 10 days. I think there's 1 month 7 days. There's all sorts of variety. It's about finding what works for your trip the best. There is no rhyme or reason. For us, we had about 13 travel days planned in our itinerary, and 13 is not an option, so we picked that 15-day as kind of a buffer, and we were able to add 2 extra days as we went throughout our trip. We ended our trip using the entire 15 days, partly because we wanted to maximize it and get the most for our money, and also partly because we ended up adding on a spontaneous Austria trip for the last 2 days of our trip, and we needed that buffer of extra travel days. So sometimes it is helpful. Say you're debating between the 7 and the 10-day. My advice would be go for the 10-day and have a little bit of buffer. We found ourselves using Eurail very grateful that we hadn't done individual train tickets, just for how much we changed our schedule and honestly how many trains we missed. Had we booked all of our trains ahead of time and been planning on them for weeks and weeks and weeks, we wouldn't have had that flexibility, and when we missed trains, we would be out that money. Where with Eurail, we could just cancel one and add a new one. Hopefully this video hasn't been too long and boring. I wanted to include all the possible information I could think of and give it to you as a resource to use. Overall, I would do Eurail again. It's not a perfect system, but it is a great way to travel around Europe and really maximize your time. Please leave any and all questions about this down in the comments. I'll try to respond to every single one, because I wish I had someone I could ask these questions to when we were planning for our trip. Also queued up in our videos to make is a video all about traveling Europe and money saving tips. So if you have any questions about traveling Europe in general that you want to see included in that video, also leave those down in the comments. All done! Only 55 minutes. Hopefully, as you're watching this video, it's like 14. A little behind the scenes for you.